I'm getting used to this, I guess. Anyway, hello, my name is Kari Kwas. I'm with the Northwest Neighborhood. Tonight is our May meeting, and we have special guest Tyler Chism from the city of Everett. You may recognize his name from Live in Everett. They're similar, different, etc. But anyway, he's going to talk about events. It's going to be wonderful. And also tonight we have our new council liaison, Brenda Stonecipher, who's currently the president of the council still, right? Yeah. So, and also, let's see, I have David Simpson and I have awesome neighbors, a couple from the steering committee, Coral and John and Russ, our money guy. So it's always nice to have them here too. So without further ado, it's sunny outside. So maybe we'll get through our conversation and then we can all go back outside because we have to take advantage of this weather. So I would love to introduce Brenda and say welcome. I know you're a Northwest neighbor, but if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then what updates do you have from the city for us?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So I am Brenda Stonecipher. I was born and raised in Everett. I grew up in South Everett and went to Cascade High School and then went to school at the University of Washington. I have been, my day job is that I'm a CPA and I do managerial consulting, mostly financial advisory and strategic financial planning type stuff for nonprofit organizations. I have been on the council, I think this is my 17th year, and have served in a lot of different variety of roles. I'm really happy to serve the residents of Everett and really enjoy working on the challenges and all the great things that we have going in our community. In my time on council, I've probably been distinguished as champion of the parks system, and I've served as the liaison to the Parks Board for almost all of the years that I've been on council, except this one. So I've had a lot of experience in parks. I've been a real supporter of the public art programs and the arts in our community. I've served on the budget committee, served on public safety. So I've pretty much done every role there. But my favorite and what's near and dear to my heart is really parks and recreation. I think that a lot of the cultural amenities that we create in our community are not expensive. It's not the most expensive part of our budget, but I think the bang that we get out of the investment that we make is just really, really high. So I'm excited to hear from Tyler what we're doing this year as we come out of COVID. We have opportunities to resume some of the really fun things that I know our community really appreciates and loves. What are the updates? We just passed the Everett Water Comprehensive Plan. That was a huge undertaking from our Public Works Department. It's about a 7-year cycle that they have to do a comprehensive plan for our water utility. And it's important because the planning that goes into it really impacts the funds that we have to raise from tax revenues to do the kind of the infrastructure development. One of the good news pieces that we learned through this process is that the state many years ago, 20 years ago, required that any city that had residential users that were not on a meter, so if you had water but you weren't being metered, the state required that the city go back and install meters for all those residential homes. The idea is just to try to get people to be paying for the water that they're using, so they have an incentive not to use as much. And the deadline, because it turned out to be quite complicated and expensive for most municipalities like Everett that had a lot of old users on the system, like a lot of the Northwest neighborhood homes, they kept extending the deadline, and I think it's actually extended out through 2023. But the good news is that the city of Everett has completed that those retrofits, and so all of our residential users now are on metered water. And so for some of you who were not on a meter, you probably think, well, that's not good for me, but it turns out that you probably will end up paying less as a metered user unless you were kind of a super user. So that happened. We start kicking off our budget process for the 2022 budget, and that is going to be interesting. So because of a lot of the federal funding that we received this year for COVID relief and other, just the various programs that we got, we actually have a surplus this year, or we're expecting to have a surplus. Actually, it's from last year. We'll have a surplus that we will carry forward, that will almost be enough to plug the budget gap that we have projected for 2022. So it's about about $11 million. And the administration has made a recommendation that the city use that surplus from last year to plug that gap so that we don't have to make any more service cuts. So we'll, as a council, over the next several months, be evaluating that surplus, how we should use it, and determining whether it is, whether we agree with the administration that it should be fully used to bridge that budget gap. What else is happening? The Parks Department is in the midst of a Parks, Recreation, and Open Space update. So they'll put a plan together that will be like a 5 or 10 year, I can't remember what the timeline is for the plan, but it's kind of an investment in parks, and where do we need to invest in more park space? How can we build out some of the parkland that we currently own that we haven't fully developed yet? And how are we going to pay for it all? So there are a lot of important questions to be answered, and particularly as we look at the growth rate in our community, we want to make sure that we're keeping up on providing park space for as we grow, so that people have parks to go to. There's a survey out. I should have brought the link. I'm sure it's linked on the city's website. Maybe Tyler can drop that in the chat or something. Thank you. And it is really, really important that we get good representation from our community on this survey. It asks for the kinds of things that you want to the Parks Department to develop. It's interesting because I've, like I said, been on city council for 17 years, and I've been through, I think, 3 of these parks, recreation, open space planning processes. And the number one thing that people always say that they want more of is walking and biking trails. And so we've built some of those out, but I've got a bet with one of my council colleagues that that the number one thing is going to be biking and walking trails, because I don't think we've quite established as many as we would have liked to or wanted to. Certainly we've had the budget problems to keep us from doing that. But anyway, if you can participate in the survey, I don't think it takes 15 minutes of your time, and it really does get us a lot of good information that will help craft the plan and what we decide to invest in over the next 10 years. That's all I have at the top of my mind. The council is, we need to undertake a little bit of an effort to talk about how we're going to reopen our meetings to in-person participation. As the vaccines have been rolling out, a lot of people are getting vaccinated and are ready to get back into more of social gatherings, and certainly a city council meeting can be that. One of the governor's requirements is if a city council or governing body is going to meet with the members meeting in person, then it is required that you provide space for the public to be able to attend the in-person as well. And because our city council chambers are small with the 6-foot distancing guidelines, it makes it a little bit challenging for us to think about how we might be able to do that until we have less of a distancing requirement, or trying to decide if we would at some point, if that becomes possible to do so, would we think about allowing only fully vaccinated people to attend, and then make another space for people who are not. So there are a lot of factors involved, but one of the important questions that I think we really need to deal with and think about and talk about as a community, not just the council, but also those who we represent, is really just how much of the remote convenient options should we be taking into the future? Since we've been remote and people can call in and give testimony on certain items or just on any during public comment, we've had people that have been able to participate in our meetings that probably haven't in the past or might not have if they had to actually show up downtown Everett to give that testimony. So there's been some real advantages to that. We've had, I think, different perspectives brought to our council meeting from our those who we represent, and I think that there's some value to thinking about how we could continue to allow that type of testimony. Certainly we have the technology to do it, and it's just a matter of figuring out the flow of the meeting and the staffing and how we're going to fit that into a meeting when we go back and start meeting in person again. So a lot of good questions and opportunities before us on those fronts. And so we'll take up those questions over the next couple of months, because certainly I anticipate by the end of summer, I would be surprised if we weren't meeting in person by the end of summer at least.
Yeah, thank you for that update. I think every organization I'm aware of is facing that challenge right now of what is the future going to look like? And since we sort of get a chance to think about it for a little while, what do we want it to be instead of what it has to be? So any questions for Brenda from the group? John.
This is sort of off the wall, but the Herald just published a series on earthquakes, and only 1 mile of our 431 miles of water pipes are seismically refitted. Is there any money for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't look at the specific capital budget plan in the public works, so I'll have to check in with our public works director to find out. But I'm sure that there are, as they replace them, I know that they do the seismic upgrades, but you know, that is a process that takes a long time because they don't replace them all at once. So that's a great question. I'll have to get back to you about that. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
Any other questions? And welcome to your colleague, Paul Roberts. He's joined us. And I'll say, hi, Karen. Yay. And Mary, hello. It's nice to see faces. I think, like you're describing, it's tricky because we have had people show up to Zoom meetings that have not come to the college when we've met in person. And I honestly think that it's easier for people to hear on Zoom than it is in person. So there's maybe that balance of what way do you go? And then certainly for people with families, what do you do? Then you're trying to deal with childcare. So that's always been a challenge, like for certain, it's going to be an interesting world. I'm heading to a meeting next week on hybrid meetings, which the person led it by saying, well, they suck. So we'll see what happens. Any other questions? This is the business part of the meeting, I guess. Then we get to move to fun. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. So without further ado, then I'd like to introduce our other neighbor, Tyler Chism, who I will let him explain his history, because when we were chatting last week, we met at Grand Avenue Park, and it was fun to just sort of hear your evolution on Everett a little bit. And then also what summer looks like for the city. And then we can move into, I think Holly's joined now, into what maybe the 4th of July might look like, and then Mother of All garage sales. So welcome, Tyler.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, I'd love to share a little bit about my history with Everett. I'm going to start with 2 fun facts. Of the people that are on this call right now, I used to be employed by one of them, and I used to be in a band with the other. So who can guess who I was employed by? Everyone's muted. Somebody's got to unmute and take a stab at it.
You played with Randy.
Paul Roberts.
Paul Roberts.
So no, I was employed by Holly Gibson. I bartended at the Anchor in my early to mid 20s, and it was the best job I've ever had. Definitely the most interesting job I've ever had. And I learned a lot about myself through the people that I met there, and I made a lot of great relationships at the Anchor too. It was such a really, it was such a fun place to work. And then guess who I was in a band with?
Paul Roberts.
Yeah, there it is. Paul played pedal steel. Paul is the best pedal steel player that I've ever met in my life. Though, to be honest, I don't know a ton of pedal steel players, but you watch Paul play and you're like, damn, that guy's really good at playing just music in general. So yeah, I moved to Everett when I was 19. I grew up in Marysville. I moved to Everett thinking I would move to Seattle. I was a musician and I always wanted to move to like Capitol Hill where all my friends were moving to be in bands, and I fell in love with the community. This is sort of a weird, maybe non sequitur point here, but I loved the show Dawson's Creek growing up when and there's something about Everett that reminded me of the camaraderie of the kind of small town feel of that show. It was really easy for me to make friends and get plugged into the art scene, and I just kind of never left. And I work for the city now in economic development. Before I worked for the city, I ran a creative agency in town called Milltown Creative. My wife still runs that. We worked with Snohomish County and the city of Everett and Providence, and we would say Milltown Creative worked on projects that improved and protected the quality of life of every living thing in Snohomish County. And then Live in Everett created with the co-founder Garrett Hunt several years ago to help kind of amplify and tell good stories about Everett. I've been working in tourism as a contractor with Laney McMullen with the city, and I'd often feel like tourism, we spent so much time telling stories about Everett outside of Everett to tourists. I wanted to create Live in Everett to help tell stories, positive stories inside of Everett. So it was a complementary piece to tourism and the work that we were doing there, and we sort of funded it privately through our business. And now I'm on staff at the city, like I said, and my role is placemaking coordinator, which is a fancy word for project coordinator that works on quality of life initiatives, cultural arts, and events. And so that's what I'm here to talk to you all about today, is what we have going on in the events world at the city of Everett as we're starting to come out of COVID and hopefully, right, and see some events coming back online. It's pretty exciting. You did ask me earlier if I had a presentation, Kari, and I actually do. I just gave a similar presentation a few weeks ago and I forgot that I had it. But it's sort of up to the group whether or not you prefer slides or just want to watch me talk. What's more helpful to everyone?
Some visuals are nice. We can still see you talk.
Cool. I'll pull up the presentation.
And you are a gift to the city, says Paul and Laura.
Laura's a gift to the city. Thank you, Paul. All right. Do you see my PowerPoint window right now?
I do, yes.
Thanks. It's kind of hard. I'm on this Microsoft Surface and it's, and can you confirm, is it full screen on your end? Sometimes it doesn't.
No, and now it just jumped into Teams chat.
Uh-oh. Hopefully there's nothing, oh no. I'm like a full on,
See.
All right. Trying this again. Don't mind my coworker conversation there.
I'll just say while you're figuring that out that I did not know that Holly worked at the Anchor. So that was fun trivia for me. Makes total sense.
All right, you should have full screen now.
Yes, I do.
Full screen.
Right on, thank you. All right, so really quick, this is our economic development department. Dan Ernestine is the director. Julio Cortez is the senior communications officer. He also heads up our tourism initiative, Visit Everett.
I think I liked it.
And I am the placemaking coordinator, as I had said. I'm hearing somebody else talk. Is that coming through on y'all's end? Okay.
Yeah, I'll keep working on that. Thanks.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't something playing over here. So today I'm going to share about some festivals and events. And first I'll talk about city events, and then some private events and private organizations, and then kind of broadly speaking what our events policy is and has been during COVID. So the first thing I want to talk about is sorticulture. Sorticulture is coming back. For those who don't know, Sorticulture is a garden arts festival that's been happening in Everett for over 20 years. And I'm very nervous to be at the helm of Sorticulture now because it is so beloved by vendors and residents and visitors. It's really unique. Generally, we hold it at Legion Park. This year, we're moving it to downtown. The reason we're moving it to downtown is first and foremost a safety and practical reason. We're still in phase 3 when the event happens, which is June 11th through 13th. Phase 3 allows for outdoor gatherings. It limits the capacity, and it also limits the capacity on the buses to 1/3. And so with it being at Legion, we have to shuttle people in. It's not practical for us to shuttle people in. And certainly when we were making the decision to move it to downtown, this was several months ago, and we didn't know what COVID would look like, and we were nervous about putting people into buses. So those are the practical and safety reasons. Secondary reason, close second, is we really want to have some positive economic impact for downtown, which, you know, has really been hit hard with COVID. So many downtown businesses rely on people working downtown, and you know, with so many people working from home, not only that, the bars and restaurants and how they've had to close and reopen and all of the struggles that they've had. And so moving Sorticulture downtown will allow us to bring a critical mass of people to support those businesses. So as I said, Sorticulture will have COVID safety measures in place because we're still in phase 3. So if you come at peak times, there might be a little bit of a line. Phase 3 allows us to have a little bit over 600 people in at a time, and it'd probably be helpful if I told you where in downtown we're having it. Forgive me. It's on Wetmore Avenue between Hewitt and Everett Avenue. It'll utilize part of California as well, so it'll make kind of a T shape. We'll utilize the Wetmore Theater Plaza, and then we're gonna still have live music. We're gonna put the bands up on the balcony at the Everett Performing Arts Center, and the bands will play kind of down to the festival. We have about 100 vendors lined up, and it should be a really great show. For context, at Legion Park, Sorticulture is usually about 140 vendors, so we definitely have less, but you know, so many artists are not comfortable doing shows yet, but it should be a great show. And after this, I'll answer questions. So if you have questions about Sorticulture, you can ask me. The other event I want to talk about is the 4th of July. And so the 4th of July, here's a couple updates on that. No parade this year, but there are fireworks. As of last Thursday, the plan was, you know, and last Thursday is when it was announced that the state would be reopening on June 30th. We didn't really have a festival planned. It was more opening up the parks and trying to activate as many areas in kind of small community gatherings, and just trying to get people to where they could watch the fireworks. So we had planned a drive-in parking along West Marine View Drive, and had worked with the port to get a lot of drive-in parking there. But with the announcement that the state is reopening, we are planning a festival at Legion Park, and we'll have bands there and a beer garden and food trucks and lots of fun stuff for kids, and kind of like classic colors of Freedom Festival at Legion Park. In addition to the Legion Park Festival, there's a lot of fun community things that are happening. And you know, as I had mentioned before, it had been announced that we would be reopening on June 30th. We had done quite a bit of work to engage neighborhoods and community groups to try to use some of our budget that we would traditionally use for live music to sort of activate and empower smaller gatherings. So, you know, can we support neighborhood groups with, you know, hard costs of planning an event, street closure, porta potties? Can I pay for a sound person to be there so local musicians can play at a kind of lower COVID safe? We're going to continue to do that. So in addition to Legion Park, I'm working, you know, I had a meeting with Kari and then Jane over in Bayside. I met with Ryan over in the Delta neighborhood today. And I want to talk more about this at the end of this presentation with y'all, of how we can, how I can support you to potentially host a Northwest neighborhood gathering and then sort of progress to Grand Avenue Park or to Legion, but more on that to come in a second. The farmers market's back, as everyone's probably noticed. The farmers market is a really public and private partnership. We brought it to downtown Everett several years ago, and this is its third year in downtown now, third season, and we love it downtown. It started May 9th and it's going through October 31st this year, so it's a little bit of an extension. So you'll be able to get all those, get your pumpkins there this year, and then they are operating under COVID restrictions as well, which are a little bit looser for farmers markets than an event like Sorticulture, which falls under the guidelines of fairs and events. But we love the farmers market. And then Jetty Island Days is returning as well, which I'm thrilled about. So the Jetty Island Ferry will return. It'll open on July 5th. It's going to be Wednesday through Sunday this year. And then bringing the Jetty Island Ferry back was such a great partnership with the Port of Everett, Snohomish County, and the City of Everett. And that's really, you know, I told you about my colleague Julio Cortez. That's been his project on the city's end, helping to bring that back. In addition, with our Parks Department as well. It's great. So I think there will be a $3 admission to ride the ferry this year. And then I believe that Julio and the port and the county are working on a way to make it free for those who can't pay the $3 fare. So I'll put a link after this to the city's Jetty Island Days page. So upcoming city events. Later on in the year, we'll do Wintertide again this year, similar to how we did it in 2020. In 2020, let me back up a little bit. In the past, Wintertide has been a one-day event that we've held at the Everett Performing Arts Center. And we had been kicking around the idea of making Wintertide a season rather than just a single event. And the season kicks off on Small Business Saturday and runs through the end of the year. And so in 2020, with all of the COVID restrictions, that's how we did it. We used Wintertide as a economic development initiative to really encourage people to shop local. Turned it into a season. We invested in partnership with the Downtown Everett Association and the Arboretum to do some lighting. And then we took Santa around on a fire truck all around to the different neighborhoods. Santa hit every neighborhood thanks to the Everett Fire Department, and people really loved it. And I think we're going to do something similar again this year and just try to expand that, invest a little more in lighting, try to activate. You know, we did some cool stuff in South Everett with our partners on Casino Road to do some holiday themed activities down there. And I think continuing to build partnerships with Wintertide and really make it kind of Everett's holiday season that encompasses all neighborhoods and all groups. And, you know, the city will have some of its own programming and then work to sort of empower and activate other cool stuff to come on. And then we'll also hold the Went and Mayor's Arts Awards. That will actually be February of 2022 when we'll have that festival. And that's going to be an awesome Mayor's Arts Awards. We're going to be giving out double awards. So we'll be giving out the 2020 and the 2021 awards, February of 2022. So be on the lookout for that. So city events that were canceled are Music in the Parks, Cinema Under the Stars, Street Tunes, and Word on the Street were all were kind of taken off the list this year for kind of various reasons, resource shortages and COVID safety, not knowing what it would look like for putting pianos out on the streets that people share and things like that. Some of, you know, Street Tunes, Word on the Street, there's still a possibility that come August, we might be able to roll those out so people can enjoy them. At least that's my hope. But we'll have to find some partners to help us with that. And I'm working on that now. So here's some cool news. These are upcoming events and private event organizers that have submitted applications, special event permit applications with us, or, you know, we're working and courting them to kind of host their event in Everett. The Upper Left Beer Fest is coming back. Looks like that'll be in August. as well as the food truck festival in August. 3-on-3 basketball, if anybody is familiar with Hoop Fest, there's the founder of Hoop Fest and the company that started that. They're looking at a West Side Hoop Fest. Hoop Fest is a big 3-on-3 basketball tournament that happens in Spokane, and so they're looking at Everett for their for a West Side Hoop Fest. And that's great. That's a big annual event that we could count on every year, kind of transforms the city. And I think we've pretty much sealed the deal with them. They really love Everett and our streets. And, you know, we do make it easy for event organizers to host events here. Cruising to Colby's looking at coming back, but I believe it'll be in September. The Shaq's Artist Garage Sale, Yankee Doodle Dash on the 4th of July. Fisherman's Village is planning something. That's the big outdoor music festival. I believe, and I have a star next to this one, not yet confirmed, so don't hold me to this, but I believe we have a private organization that's going to help bring Music at the Marina back. And then Snohomish Running Company has a bunch of events planned. They do the Everett Half Marathon, and so those are always fun events. As well, the Nubian Jam at the end of July is coming back too, and I have a meeting with them on Monday to help kind of coordinate that. That's at Forest Park, and I think it's July 25th, but it's online. And then I get a lot of questions about Everett's event policy, specifically during COVID, and how we've based our decisions on what we permit and what we don't. And we don't make the decisions here at Everett. We follow the state's guidelines. We do ask event organizers to submit COVID safety plans, and they sign an affidavit that basically says that if the rules change from the time you submit your COVID safety plan with your event application, that you'll adhere to whatever the guidelines are on the day of your event. And all of the state's guidance, it's kind of hard to find for businesses and events, but if you go to everettwa.gov/state reopening, that's got all of the nuanced guidance for events and all of the different types of business categories, I would say. So retail, bars and restaurants, outdoor events, spectator events, performing arts, all of those things that have slightly different nuances to the way that they operate. The state has been good at getting out guidance and basing their rules on the specific criteria and nuances to that. And so hopefully, if we all do our part, get vaccinated, stay masked up, follow the rules, June 30th, we won't have to worry about these reopening and guidelines with events and rules like that. So yeah, I really just want to encourage everyone, follow the rules, wear your mask, get vaccinated, and then let's all get together on the 4th and have a big party together. I'm going to quit. That's the end of my slides. So I'm going to just kind of focus my attention here again. And first, I want to answer any questions. I know I was going through that kind of fast. And then I want to have a conversation about the 4th of July and potentially how we could partner. So any questions?
Quiet.
Somebody asked me a question. Come on.
So how is the upper left ear fence going to space everybody out? Or is it that the thoughts that as we move forward, then those restrictions will be lessened, I guess?
Yeah, so they're banking that at the end of August, the state will be reopened enough to where they can host a outdoor drinking event.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they're banking on. And if not, they could do it under, right now, the state's guidelines for outdoor events fall under the same guidelines as the fair. And the guidelines are more nuanced in terms of how to calculate capacity. You know, before it was just capped at a number, 400 people, 200 people, depending on what phase you're in. The new guidelines allow one person per 72 square feet. So it's about 600 people per acre. So that's how they're doing that. So even if we're still in phase 3, the beer fest can happen. They'll just have to have a big footprint and space the vendors like we're doing with Sorticulture.
Yeah, it's exciting to hear stuff again. I was talking, oh, maybe even Mary, somebody this week. It's going to be weird, and even a lady today, to re-enter, I think. And I guess my follow-up question is how does the city, how do we, when we're having events, make people feel more comfortable coming back out again when we've all been told to be in our homes and ignore people, or not ignore them, but stay away from them at some level, right? How is the city sort of going through that process?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for the mayor or administration with any of this. I'm only going to speak for how I'm thinking about it as an event organizer. You know, we are waiting for some guidelines from LNI that will determine sort of mask policies now that the CDC has issued some more guidance on when you don't need to wear a mask. Whether or not that'll translate to us saying, you know, Sorticulture is an outdoor event, masks, you don't have to wear a mask if you're vaccinated. I don't know that we have that figured out yet of how we're gonna check that, and we're waiting for guidance from kind of LNI, also from a staff perspective too, right? Like, you know, we'll have parks employees there and staff working, you know, myself. So should know more on that this week. I would say that as far as getting out in the open and being kind of having anxiety about that, I will say that I feel it for sure. And I had COVID, you know, like March of 2020, I had COVID, and I got the vaccine. I don't want to get COVID again. And the other thing I'm anxious about are my social skills just being totally ruined. Look at how awkward I am on this call. You know, it's like I'm normally pretty light on my feet and pretty good around people. But the other day I ran into somebody who I hadn't seen for a long time, and the only thing I knew to say to them was compliment their hat like 3 times and then walk away. So I think there's just social anxiety around getting out and seeing people. And so it's a word of encouragement is I think we're all feeling it together. You know, I do feel like for the most part, people are pretty, at least the spaces that I occupy, people are pretty sensitive to other people's like level of comfort. You know, they're pretty empathetic. Most people I greet, you know, even if I meet them outside, and maybe this is true for you, they'll be wearing a mask. They'll say, I'm vaccinated. Are you vaccinated? Are you comfortable taking the mask off? I really appreciate that. And I think that's important that we continue to kind of be that way until, and again, these are my opinions. So, yeah.
Yeah. Good. Any other questions?
Will the 4th of July fireworks be in the same place as always?
Yep, we're gonna have a water launch show. You know, we looked at whether or not we could do a few different smaller fireworks shows from like a land launch. It's really hard to find a place to launch the fireworks that aren't potentially going to kill somebody. So, you know, we're a seaside town, and it seems right to launch the fireworks off the waterfront. You know, I was talking to Carol Thomas, who's kind of formerly not the exact same position that I'm in, but she used to head up this department. And she said that since she's worked for the city, they've tried to find other ways to, other places to potentially launch fireworks. One thing that's interesting about a water launch fireworks show that I didn't know is it's really expensive because of the barge that you have to launch it from, the tugboat service and the barge, and it's so far set from the land. The shells are really big, so the shells themselves are really expensive. And if, you know, people, me included as a resident, if I take off my city employee hat and put on my resident hat, I feel like the fireworks are really expensive. And so we've looked at ways to reduce those costs. But I think, I don't know, I think there's a whole other part of it too. You know, we're a waterfront community, and it just makes sense to have if we're going to have a fireworks show and blow a bunch of stuff, then it might as well happen over the water. And it offers, you know, a lot of people can watch it too from the various viewpoints. So it's, in terms of access, it's a great place to launch the show. It's a long way of saying yes, they're in the same spot.
I would
Any other?
say that I remember the jetty, I think, catching fire when I was a kid. And I also remember them being at Memorial Stadium at least once, and then it moved to the water. So I think it's a good spot.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, there's always concern about catching Jetty Island on fire. I've learned a lot about fireworks and pyrotechnics this year, I'll tell you. It's pretty interesting how much thought and calculation goes into like what the wind is blowing that day is where they'll park the barge, because they account for so much drift based on what the wind is doing. It's pretty precise.
I always would say try and get the boaters, and maybe it's a David thing, but to recognize that the other side is a tidal flat and it's not advised to park your boat on the west side of the jetty and watch the fireworks. There's always a boat on the 5th. It just happens.
Yeah, that's too bad. Well,
Yeah.
how you learn, I guess.
Well, so I wanted to then moving into the 4th of July, because Holly and I did talk, and we had talked, Tyler, you and I and Jane from Bayside, and trying to figure out what makes sense as, again, we re-enter, what makes sense for the neighborhood as we're trying to re-engage people or engage new neighbors, because a lot of people have moved here.
Yeah.
And so I guess I wanted to clarify, because you said that there will be the festival at Legion, but will there be then viewing at Grand Avenue Park?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the things, since you and I met, I've done a little bit of work to think about what something at Grand could look like, and got some numbers together, the things that I can cover based on my budget. And that the vision for that is a collaboration between kind of Bayside and Northwest. It's a park that kind of straddles both neighborhoods, and it's, I think with the Grand Avenue Park Bridge too, it's going to be like the new hotspot for watching the fireworks. You know, I think that's one thing that I didn't really consider until this week, is how the bridge is a game changer. And so I really want to activate that space. And, you know, we're so concentrated at Legion, you know, that's why it really needs to be a partnership with the neighborhoods. And so what I can commit to are some of the hard costs of like the street closure. We can work together to determine what blocks we want to close off. Traditionally, it's been 16th to 19th, and then I think about a half block to the east. And if we need to expand that, we can. Talk to Michael Brick in traffic about that. I also, since I have sound equipment already going to Legion, it's easy for me to kind of set up a second audio person at Grand Avenue Park and bring you all some speakers, and maybe even help coordinate a couple local artists to perform. Holly, I can't tell if she's saying hell yeah. Holly, is that a big thumbs up? It looks like a big thumbs up, Holly. Nope, thumbs down. Okay, well, I'm going to turn it over to Holly here. Holly, why don't you unmute and tell me what you're thinking.
I'm thinking, what the hell are you thinking is going to happen on Grand Avenue Park with 2 neighborhood groups?
What do you mean?
What do you mean? What do you think is going to happen from the time the sun gets up on the 4th of July at Grand Avenue Park, which is in our neighborhood, does not straddle the other neighborhood? What are you seeing is going to happen at Grand Avenue Park from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m.?
Well, 9 a.m. seems maybe a little bit earlier than I was planning.
Well,
But it sounds like a loaded question, maybe, and maybe you have some thoughts. So I'd love to just hear what you're thinking.
what are you thinking?
I'm going to jump in, because when Holly and I were talking, we were trying to figure out how we could like have outreach for Northwest or whomever wants it at where the people are. So if they're going to be at Legion and or Grand, then we can be present and sort of engage them that way. Is that why now I want to hear from Holly, but anyway, just to get you up to speed about what we were talking about.
Right on. Yeah, and I apologize. Maybe rather than going into what I'd been thinking the last couple of days since we met, I should have started by asking a question. So forgive me. I'd love to hear what you're thinking.
Especially instead of having my head go like that.
I was kidding about the timeout and the And I knew you were giving me a timeout. I was just messing with you. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm too familiar after all those years of working for you.
Yeah. So I guess I don't feel like we have an army of anybody to pull any kind of anything off in 30 days. Period. We have a couple of things come. We are going to do our garage sale, and we're kind of small and barely getting our asses off the ground. And so I don't want to put ourselves in a position where you need us to do something and we're scrambling to pull bodies together.
Yeah, I
So I don't
understand.
want to be in a volunteer position where I need 20 people all of a sudden when I don't want to ask 20, when, you know what I mean? I'm not sure. Anyway, so
Yeah,
that's
yes.
as a resource, that's kind of where I'm kind of defending Grand Avenue. If you have something going on, my experience after Easter is people are really reluctant as shit. They don't even talk when they're standing next to each other. They're like, so I was ready to be overwhelmed at Easter and I was not. I was taken back and people were like, me. So my thought was that if you're going to do an awesome, Kari and I was leading into if we were going to do an awesome thing at Alverson, that we could represent our neighborhood and do some kind of fun thing at a booth and something that way, but that we
Right on.
didn't have any kind of really resource to bring to a separate table or feel the energy it takes to do that right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's great. If that's what you're feeling, let's work on if it's meeting neighbors and you want to do something at Albertson, I'm happy with that. Let me just clarify a little bit of what I would see your scope of work being at something at Grand Avenue. So we have park staff that would handle trash and maintenance. We have EPD that'll handle traffic control and be there keeping an eye from a public safety standpoint. We have a sound person that I hire out of my 4th of July budget to put another sound person there. I think if nothing else, if we don't want to have live performances, you know, there is a soundtrack when the fireworks go off, and it'd be nice to hear that. You know, you can hear it at Legion, but you haven't been able to hear it at Grand. And beyond that, your role is to tell people that there's a soiree at Grand Avenue Park, bring a picnic, and come and hang out with your neighbors. You know, the scope of work isn't, hey, coordinate all of the porta potties and street closures and all that stuff. I'm handling that. You know, parks maintenance handles trash, police handle public safety. So, you know, I just want to clarify.
What do we have to do then?
Show up and tell people about it. You know, and if you have other creative ideas like a food truck or something, then I can help with that too. You know, it's just somebody kind of needs to be there as the host of the party, you know, and I think so that's where your booth shows up, and that's where the Bayside neighborhood booth shows up too. Although I maybe hear some reluctance about whether or not that park is, you know, I do think that's maybe just another point to iron out later, but
No, it's everybody's park. Any neighborhood should have their booth there. We could have the Office of Neighborhoods have every booth there or whatever. I mean,
Yeah,
because
but
it's the neighborhood, it's the city jewel.
yeah, and it's a
So
really
maybe we
popular
open it
place
up to a little bit further.
Yeah, and you know, if it's the point of this conversation, Holly and everybody, I just want to clarify, I'm not coming to the neighborhood saying we're light on resources, please work for the city for free. What I am saying is how can I help your neighborhood? Like, how can I help the neighborhood do something more for the 4th of July as we sort of spread people out so it's not all concentrated at Legion? And since I'm already having stuff go to Legion for the festival, it's pretty minimal on our end to bring some more stuff to Legion or to Grand Avenue Park. So that's where the Northwest neighborhood can kind of set up and be the host of that party. So that
How long's the
I
party?
want to clarify. I think we would need to determine that, that's the whole partnership angle of this.
Yeah, I think that would be a big in or out for me of how long am I hosting?
Yeah. I would think it wouldn't be just you. I think there's other people in the neighborhood that would be involved in it too, so 4 p.m. is when Legion will start. I believe Delta neighborhood's going to be doing some stuff earlier in the day. And so Legion starts at 4 is when we'll start running the shuttles at 3, and then we'll start having activities kind of open up around 4.
So if you had a stage, which is a great idea to have the music, I mean, if you had an audio guy to cover the same music that the fireworks is, you want us to consider possibly having live music at Grant. If
Yeah,
there's a person there and the equipment's there, would you want us to lean that way?
Yeah, there's 2 different ways to do it. One way is I have kind of worked it out with the sound engineer. There's one way of doing it where it's a playlist and we bring the audio equipment and it's pre-recorded music. If that were the case, I would need somebody to sort of keep an eye on it officially. The other is I can get a sound engineer there that could control levels for live performances, but the live performance setup would be like a solo artist, an instrumentalist, or potentially a duo. So the way that I have it budgeted would allow for up to 2 vocalists, but not a full band, no drums, none of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, 2 mics or something.
Yeah. Yep.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
How many people does Grand Avenue Park hold? It seems like around the 4th of July, that park is packed already.
Yeah, especially around the fireworks, it's really busy.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be even busier at the Grand Avenue Park Bridge. How many people it holds, I'm not sure. I could look into that, and but
I don't think they qualify that. I don't think they qualify. They haven't figured that out yet. How many people do parks holds? They have buildings.
But you're saying, oh, bring a picnic and spread out your blanket and have a little picnic and wait for the fireworks, and how fast is it going to fill up? And there's still people walking down from 19th and from Broadway to get to the park.
Yeah, it'll get dense around the fireworks, and I'm not sure how to address that. It's a popular place to watch the fireworks from.
Right. So yeah, how do we control that?
But the closure, just to clarify, the closure that we were talking about is Grand Avenue Park, but also the street as well between 16th and 19th. So that, whether or not you want to set up a picnic table in the street or a picnic blanket on the street, I don't think is what people want to do, but
No.
It does allow for more places to stand and gather and things like that.
I'm going to jump in again to say that I think, again, where Holly and I were coming from, our discussion started talking about Drew Nielsen and maybe doing games. And then it was like, well, that could be in the morning, but then how would that be? And do we want people coming there if they're already going to be going there, right? Families will probably fill the park because it's the holiday. And then it was like, well, then what benefits us, but then how can we sort of help? And that's where we landed, I think, on the table or some sort of activity that we could bring to one of the places where it's already activated and people are hanging out. But I don't think, as Holly said very clearly, we have the bodies and the people to sort of man or protect equipment or hang out or something like that. That's just kind of not where we are because we haven't been together.
Yeah, I understand that.
We've been having our own challenges trying to even get our other events off the ground. So that's where it's like, okay, how can we participate? Acknowledge, hey, we're here. And I like Holly's idea too of having other neighborhoods, because to some extent, it is one of those opportunities, especially for Northwest, where Mother of All Garage Sales is a month later. And we can advertise that. We were talking about maybe doing some pet waste outreach because my goodness, people pick up.
Yeah.
And then also just, hi, we're here. And as the new neighbors have arrived, we have not been able to properly greet them because we've all been locked in our houses. So it's sort of like, it's a reintroduction, I think, of how we're seeing it to the fact that there is an association. We're here, we do stuff but then how can we insert ourselves in it as opposed to being responsible for it? So I think that's where we landed, where we could go, yeah, we could show up from 4 to 6 and kind of hang out while people are eating, or maybe, and then from the city budget standpoint, say, we love some ice cream that we could give away and make it really simple. And then we can do fun photo things or games or whatever, and something that can be, they meet us, we catch them later kind of thing. So that's kind of where we were going.
Yeah.
As far as music, yeah, I'd be happy to have like a soloist or some live music at the park. I don't typically hang out there, so it's a weird thing for me to sort of also think about from an organizing standpoint when I haven't participated at that level. I just know traffic is nuts, and people fill every space where you can look, even if it's between houses in the neighborhood, to look up and over. And all right, I'm done talking. But anyway, but that's kind of what Holly and I got to in our conversation.
Yeah, I hear you. And I see that kind of me jumping in with my ideas before listening and maybe asking what you want to get out of it. I should have reversed those, you know? So here's my thinking now is if what I'm hearing from the Northwest neighborhood is your hope for the 4th of July is that you have a space to do outreach and meet your neighbors, and you would like to do that at Alverson where there's going to be the official city festival, then let's do that. And then we can just let Grand Avenue be a passive event. And what I mean by that is that it's just a place where people are going to watch the fireworks. We're still going to have the street closure for safety. We'll still have park staff kind of handling trash and maintenance, and we'll just let that be a place where people watch the fireworks. But if the official Northwest participation in the 4th of July will be like outreach at the festival, and I'm good. We can plan for that. Find you a great spot to set up a booth. If you need a tent and a table, let me know. Parks has those. If you got your own, then bring your own and we can work out the details.
I think that sounds good and is more aligned with what Holly and I were talking about.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we definitely, I mean, welcome. By goodness, it is the best. It's the loudest day of our neighborhood.
Yeah.
But I think that would be reasonable for us to do. And maybe even when we say a 2-hour table, if we then through our group and people said, yeah, I'd love to help. I'd love to talk to people. I've been trapped in my house. Let me talk to humans. We could maybe extend that over more hours too.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we'll work out the details on that, and we'll just plan for the Northwest neighborhood to have a presence at Alverson. And then I'll continue to just work with the Bayside neighborhood sort of independently on what they got going on, and then the Delta neighborhood as well. That sounds great. And that's easier on my end too. And, you know, I'm not going to necessarily complain about that, although I think I like to dream big, you know, too, but I understand we're all kind of constrained in terms of time and resources. So I think this is great.
I think 2022 will totally be a different year.
Yeah.
And I think that we'll have, again, through even just outreach at this, we'll have more opportunity to meet people and get them engaged again. As our audience knows, or some of our steering committee members know, we've lost some members because of people, well, just being older. And we would want to connect with families and get new interest in the neighborhood association, because I can't keep doing it forever. And I know Holly can't keep doing it forever, although she probably will. But so I'm just, anyway, no, we want to meet our neighbors. We want people to join in.
Got it. Yeah, that's great. That's easy. We can provide a space for you to do that.
Any other thoughts from anybody else? I feel like thank you all for witnessing the Holly, Tyler, and Kari conversation. But does that sound reasonable? And would people be willing?
Nobody yelled. Nobody cried.
Yeah. Civil discussion.
I think I did all three, didn't I?
What would it be?
I can be either one too. If our booth needs to be at Grand, I could be there too, as long as we didn't have to cover all the everythings and everything. But I don't know. It just feels nice to be invited to the party at Alverson.
Yeah, right on. I get it. I hear you.
Thank you. for your
So,
listening skills.
yeah. Thanks, Holly. All right, everybody. I think that's it for the City of Everett update and discussion on the 4th of July. Now I'll just go back to just being a resident of the Northwest neighborhood.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thanks, everybody.
So I would like to talk mother of all garage sales, if we can. And I'm always glad when Coral's here for this conversation. When I spoke with Tyler last week and he's telling me about phase 3 and all this such, it was like, well, I could get food trucks. We're going to have food trucks. And I'm like, man, if you have food trucks, then we need food trucks. But I want to check in with Coral because if the mother of all garage sales is back and everything's fine and we just do it at homes and we still provide porta potties because that's the nice and reasonable thing to do, and washing stations, what have you. Do we need trucks? Do we need one just to have a place to get beverages? There are houses that have food at them. I'm not sure how that goes. You know, they have to set their own permits and such, but what do we want to do on that front is my number one question.
The time clock is ticking here. And by now, not last year, because I was locked in my house last year, year before last, I already had the food trucks lined up because everybody and his mother's going to want them in the summer. And we're having a family reunion the first week in August. So is ours the 7th or the 1st?
7th.
7th.
First
Okay.
is Sunday, so it's the first Saturday, the 7th.
Oh, good. Oh, I couldn't find my August calendar and I'm killing myself saying it's got to be the 7th. It's got to be the 7th.
7th.
So, you know, I can do the porta potties. I can do the washing stations and get the dumpsters and stuff at the park. But I think our moment has passed for doing food trucks and stuff. I mean, my own opinion, because it took Marika isn't with the city anymore. She's the one that knew how to do all the stuff. She knew how to get the food trucks going. Everything I couldn't have done it without her, and she's gone.
Tyler, do you have a thought there?
Tyler?
Yeah, so good news. Marika's back working at the city. She's just in a different role and she is amazing.
Yes.
So a couple thoughts on food trucks. I did organize the Everett Food Truck Festival before I worked for the city. I know a lot of food trucks. The easiest thing to do would be to work with a Snohomish County permitted food truck. I've got a list of them. One that's sort of new in town here is called Smoke and Dough Pizza. She's from Everett and she's pretty new, so she might have availability, and her pizza is really popular. She's been at a lot of the breweries. The other one that I would recommend is we can follow up via email. There's a tamale truck called Los Tamales. Maybe you've seen Hugo out there serving up his food. That would be another one that I'd reach out to because it's Everett based. I think the struggle with the mother of all garage sales is it's not a big enough crowd for some, like a certain food trucks to come out.
We use the park.
The Drew Nielsen Park, yeah, right?
Yeah, so we have to have permits to use the park, which was a whole nother permitting process.
Yeah, it's a special use permit through our Parks Department. It's about a 2-page application, and then there's a food vendor one too. So I believe it is a 2-part.
Yeah, and then they have
2
their
permits.
insurance waiver. Since they're on the park property, they have to get a big waiver, $1 million waiver from their insurance company.
Yeah, all food trucks should have that liability insurance already, and they just have to produce a certificate of insurance.
I didn't find that they did that, and I found that they.
Yeah, we require the same thing for the food truck festival, and they can generally produce it pretty quickly. But I'll just say this, I don't think having food trucks I think food trucks is a nice to have, not a need to have. I don't think it's something worth. And again, I'm talking as a Northwest neighborhood resident and not a city official here. But
my thing was, we earned maybe $500-600 was our take on the food trucks.
Mm-hmm.
And it meant more porta potties and more garbage. So, you know, we spent out of that $400 or $500.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense.
I just don't have a good feeling about trying to pull it off.
Yeah.
Well, I'll put on my city hat again, if you don't mind. That if you do want to talk about food trucks and really try to pull it off, I could make a couple emails to food trucks that I know here locally, and I could help you with the permitting and coordinating that permit stuff. That's what part of my role as the placemaking coordinator is, to help people plan events. And
Okay.
so just like
Well-
Marika helped you with that, I could help you with that.
We'll work on it in our talkative meetings and see
Yeah.
how much everybody wants to be involved in it.
Sounds good.
Right on.
Appreciate that help. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
That was my number one, but I do want to set a committee date.
Yeah, okay. I
So
have my calendar.
I know Ashley's actually, and hi Alan too, and Diane and Al who have joined. But if there's a day of the week, and I think Stephanie's on as well. So I love the little committee we have because we've been consistent. But again, I would love more people to participate in this process. So we have, if we're all hit by a streetcar, which we don't have, then somebody can take it on. So,
Right.
because it's a big deal. But like next week, everybody.
Next week starts as the 24th, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
like the
I
27th.
Absolutely nothing except on Monday evening for the whole week.
Ashley, are you listening? All these people that put their face.
I am listening.
Nice. Hello.
I didn't. We were trying to set a date for something though, right? What is the date?
Oh, that
Yeah.
is actually his voice.
27th, May 27th.
27. Okay, let me look.
And Stephanie, if you're listening too, and again, everybody's welcome. We have a good time at these committee meetings. They're fun.
Do, and if you show up, it means you're on the board for the rest of your life.
I'm grateful for Coral. Ashley,
Yeah. What time were we doing it?
I don't know, whenever. 4 onwards.
Oh yeah, I'm wide open. Let me know when.
All right, well, why don't we say 5?
Shall we use Zippy's outdoor outdoor
Say what?
area?
Yeah, that's good. All right, so we have a mother of all.
Sorry, what did you pick?
Thursday, the 27th.
Sorry, I won't be available that evening.
Okay, well, I will email you because of registration forms.
Okay.
That works. Okay. Cool. So the 27th, 5, 6.
I'm 3, I don't care. Well, let's do 6.
Yeah,
Give
why don't we
everybody
do 5?
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
All right. 5 o'clock on the 27th. Zippies. Mother of all garage sales. Everyone's welcome. I mean, within reason of their capacity. Yeah. Oh, goodness. Okay. Yeah. And the goal would be to get the registration form out in June. I've heard some sponsors mention that they would like to redo that process, and Ashley's handled that in the past for us. Coral's handled the park. So thank you to everybody. And Stephanie takes care of registrations and creates the map and the online tool for where the houses are and what they have. And then I put it together in a pretty package. So anyway, more to come on Mother of all garage sales. That's awesome. Okay. For the greater good, is there anything else going on we should be aware of in the neighborhood? Open forum.
Does anybody else drive a Prius, and have you had your catalytic converter cut off?
Oh, yeah, right.
It happened to me on Colby, right in front of my house, 8th and Colby. I parked out right on the street. Somebody cut my catalytic converter off. I went to go start my Prius and it sounded like a demolition derby.
What year of a Prius?
2008.
My
Yeah.
customer I was working for today had a friend with a warehouse, got broken into last night, stole $81,000 worth of catalytic converter parts.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It's a thing.
Yeah, it's a thing. It turns out, yeah, a bunch of my friends have Priuses, but Yeah, so be on the lookout. If you have a Prius in the Northwest neighborhood, they're coming for them.
Don't most cars have catalytic converters?
Yeah, there's something unique about the
Prius?
Prius. It's got more palladium, I think.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
palladium is the precious metal that people are trying to get out of them.
I got an
We shouldn't end the meeting on a low note, like somebody stealing my Prius catalytic converter. Somebody say something positive.
Well, I'm going to change it because you said it made a loud noise, but somebody I think on next door or somewhere else said that the city of Everett doesn't seem to have noise ordinances, and I am unsure if that's true.
No, we definitely do.
Everybody, yeah, you have to have a noise ordinance.
But for vehicles and how you would even enforce that, because people zip up and down Marine Drive, through the neighborhood, down Grand, down Colby, like everywhere with the loudest no muffler cars.
You have to get a decimal reader and record it going by. We had to do it when they built the hospital because they were too loud.
Yeah, I've talked, it's Megan Monroe at the city, if you want to talk about noise ordinance. She's the one who kind of knows everything about it. And it is kind of hard to enforce, and there's a lot of, I think, like ways to interpret certain parts of the code is what she was saying to me. But yeah, there's definitely noise ordinances.
Yeah.
Kari, if I could answer that.
Yeah.
The city does have noise ordinances. They are difficult to enforce. I don't think so this is where I part from what I know for sure. But I believe the noise ordinance is based on a certain decibel reading. And I don't think it's unique to cars or anything else. It's just a decibel level, which I believe is 55 decibels at a base, but don't quote me on that. We can get that information for you.
I'll post the ordinance in the chat, Paul. I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay, good, thank you. And so the challenge, however, is that it does require equipment, and it requires, in terms of just the legal issues, you have to see someone, you have to record it, and then you can issue the citation. So there may be more effective ways to do that. I'm hearing, so to speak, the concerns from a couple of different places, and we'll be looking at that. But Tyler, if you have better information from the web, jump in.
No, I just posted the noise ordinance. As it relates to motor vehicles, starts on the bottom of page 6. If anybody is just looking for some ordinances to read tonight, that would be start on page 6, and that's where
There's also a state law that prohibits mufflers from being altered.
Makes sense.
Can we get the good news now?
Yeah, good news.
The baby herons.
Oh yeah.
The baby herons are all like this big now and looking all cool. Everybody's out of the nest. Acting like they know what's going on. Yeah, so you got to go check that out down there behind the Performance Marine. Go down towards the 12th Street Boat Launch and take a hard right where they do the little boat wash. And there are 24, 20, 30 nests there. They're so cool. The end of the day, the sunlight's on them, so that's nice. But, you know, anytime you can get down there with binocs or something is cool. They're so cool. There's your good note.
Thank you.
Yes.
Does anyone have?
And that bird thing is over with. You can hang your bird feeders back up again.
Oh, yeah.
Bird disease that the pine siskins brought everybody is over, so you can put your bird feeders back out again.
My bird feeders are all gone because I had a rat infestation. And when the rat guy came, he said, get rid of those bird feeders. You're just attracting your rats. They're going to keep coming, and I'm not gonna.
Yeah, yeah. Hummingbird feeders will get you.
I got flowers.
Yeah.
A little more good news. This is the treasurer speaking. And currently we have $59.74 in our account. All bills are paid. Thank you very much for those who have donated and helped out the neighborhood. We appreciate every bit of it.
Thank you, Russ. Money guy. Yay.
Thank you, Russ.
Mhm. We'll keep him busy once Mother of All Garage Sales gets going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know I paid one, but I don't know what year I paid it in. It could have been 1918 for all I know.
Could have been. Any
Actually, you're
other?
good. You're good.
I am.
Okay. You gave in another way. Time is just.
Oh, no, I pay my $52.
Well, any other, it's 8:15, so go outside because the sun doesn't set for another half an hour. Woo! It's fabulous. Welcome summer. Well, I know it's not here yet, but yeah.
Ready.
Thank you for being here. We'll continue the conversation with you, Tyler, about the 4th and food trucks. And again, thanks to all the neighbors for showing up. It's nice to see so many familiar names and faces. Y'all are awesome.
I didn't know half of the people. I need to get out more.
Oh, and one thing I wanted to say is that I did put a poll in the e-news I sent out this afternoon because I'm in contact with Molly Beeman from the college about the cleanup and trying to get a sense of when people want to do that. The college is not open yet. And so if we want to do something this summer, we have to modify like Tyler was describing. So how hard do we, or how much do we want it to go forward this summer or wait until fall when it may open up? So please respond or let me know your thoughts on that too.
If it's not open up, can we use their parking lot?
See, it's still their parking lot and they're not open. So we can get a special permit to do it, but we have to provide a bunch of guidelines again about COVID and spacing and this and that. And so it was like, well, how much do we want to do that? We could probably make it happen, but I want to know what neighbors think before we put that effort in. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Good, Carrie.
The baby birds, how cool are they, Holly? Awesome. All right. Well, everyone have a lovely evening. Thanks so much. Thank you, Tyler, so much for being here.
Bye, everybody. Yeah. Good
Thanks.
seeing you all.
Take
See you
care,
around the
everybody. Be
neighborhood.
safe out there.
Yep. Keep staying safe. Get vaccinated. Yes, yes, yes. All right.
I got both of them.